Okay, so good morning, everybody. And we're still missing one. Who am I missing? Kathy Price. Kathy Price. Yeah. Hmm. That was right. Um, so we have permission to use this space once a month. I'm so grateful, as I know you guys are as well. It gives us all so much more room. So with last month's blocks, I'd like to see what you were able to do. Were you able? Did you have trouble getting your points to stay sharp? You got your half square triangles made. Ah, look at you, Kathy. Look how precious. Look, she got all her points. Yeah, she got all her points together. Blocks look great. Here, what are your others? Yeah, two. Stacy. Look at Stacy with her matching points and her matching seams. Woo. Okay. Stacy mixed it up a little bit. Okay, so you guys all know that I used the same dark green on all my corners. That's fine. It's your prerogative. You can do, like, I think the instructions had you do two of the coral corners with and two with green. I just did all mine with green. It's your, you can do it how you want to. Right? Okay, so Teresa, were you able to get any of it done? Okay. Yeah, you'll need to, because it looks like it's at least a quarter of an inch off. So you have 0 seam allowance on that corner. So you have to be careful when you're trimming up your blocks. Because remember what I said, once you cut it off, you can't put it back on. It don't work that way. So, what do you mean? Oh, to trim it. Okay. So let's talk about who's got a really good way to square up. Do any of you experienced girls have any tips for squaring blocks? Your finished blocks, trimming them up to get them to the size that the pattern says. This thing is in there. Clearly perfect slotted trimmer. It's awesome. I like it. Some of y'all have the block lock, and that works fabulously well too. You just have to know how to use your block lock. And there's instructions that you bump it up against the seam, and you're supposed to be able to trim with it that way, and it works fine. Remember, when I went, let's see, how did I do mine? So I like to use a square ruler to square up a square block. Okay. Okay. That was mine as well. So square rulers are kind of different sizes. They look different, but you need a squaring ruler. You can have one that's great big, like this one. I think is 12.5 inches. 12.5 inch ruler. This one's 10-inch ruler, 10-inch square, exactly. A squaring ruler needs to have a diagonal line. Okay? To be able to square your blocks, you need to have a diagonal line. Okay.
Can you show a picture of one of the? I have a little one like yours.
Oh yeah.
But can you show a picture, or can somebody show the picture of the block lock that they use, or the one you were talking about?
You didn't bring yours? Yeah, I don't have one.
Oh, okay. I was just curious. I thought somebody had brought one.
I think
so,
Jan had.
no.
Jan uses the block lock, but she didn't bring it with her today. She said.
Okay. Okay.
Ooh.
Never mind.
Okay. When you're squaring a block, okay, what you want to do is you want to line your. If it's supposed to be, let's see. How big was this block supposed to be? 6.5 inches?
And I think so.
Okay, so this block is, and it may be a little bit difficult to see, but when you line up your block, you put the line across the diagonal of your block. Okay, and that way you know that your block is straight. Your seams all meet. When you go to trim, you want to. Because you want to take a little bit off of every side, okay? If your block comes out really big, like this one is probably 6 3/4, so we need to take 1/4 of an inch off. So what I would do is I would take 1/8 of an inch off of 2 sides and cut it. Okay, so I would take 1/8 of an inch off here, and I'd bump it up to 1/8 of an inch here, and use your little 1/8-inch markings. You need to make sure when you're buying rulers, and there's a lot of rulers on the market, y'all, but I prefer to have rulers that have 1/8-inch markings on them. Nice, clear 1/8-inch markings. Some people don't like to use the yellow. They say it's hard to see. You can use a clear one. It does the same thing. Mine have black markings on them.
This is hard to see.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that ruler, with the highlighted lines. So, but I would not use a long ruler like that to square a block. You need a square ruler to square a block. Like I said, I would cut 1/8 of an inch off. So I would trim it. I would bump it up so that I've got 1/8 of an inch hanging off here, and then trim it this way, and then you turn the block completely around, and then this time you're going to line it up to the 6.5 inches on your ruler. Okay, so it's got to come to the 6.5 inch mark there, and then trim. And that way you've trimmed 1/8 of an inch off all the way around. Yeah, so there's a big old cutting table up here. Kathy. Yeah, okay. So, like I said, I've got some different size rulers. I brought extras today, so I'm going to move these over here to the other table. If you need help, I'm absolutely available to help you after that. So you do need to square up your block. You do need to, obviously we're going to press after we put each little piece section together. Make sure it's nice and straight, pressed and flat. Makes your stuff go together nicer. Okay. So anything else besides squaring up? Any other problems? Any other questions? Okay. All right. So you guys have done a great job with what you've got going, and we will continue to move forward with this month's stuff. So let's talk about the big block. This month we're only doing, again, we're doing one big block, the Churndash Variation. Okay, what makes it a Churndash is this part right here. This section right here, that makes it a Churndash. The variation is this block in the middle. Okay, the block in the middle, right there. It is. It's called an economy block. It's an old block, an old-timey block. This is an old-timey. This is an old traditional sampler that we're doing. So it's not real hard, but ladies, this is where you're going to have to pay real close attention to where you're sewing, making sure that your seams are 1/4 of an inch. We've done half square triangles that have points. We've done flip and stitch that have points. So we're going to do some more of that with the economy block, okay? Because your small blocks this month are just the economy block, and we'll talk about that here in just a little bit. But there's the finished block for the month. Mine are not, because I'm having to use a different fabric colors. My colors that I assigned kind of blended on this block, but it's okay. I'm good with that. It really is more to show you guys how to make a block and what the finished block looks like. Okay, so this is my pen cushion. I have pens everywhere. Okay. All right, so let me get this off the shawl. There's the finished block. Y'all can come up and look at that if you need to. Okay, so this month's block is a little different for some of y'all. So this is a new lesson for some of you not so much. The block is pretty. It's not terribly difficult, but this will be for some of y'all. This is the first time you've ever sewn with a bias. So I'm going to caution you when we're doing this, making this corner down here. You have to be real careful when you're sewing this, because remember, cotton is woven at right angles to each other, okay? So if you pull it from this direction, it doesn't give much. Pull it from this direction, it doesn't give much. But when you cut it on the diagonal, it allows even cotton to stretch. You know, cotton's not normally a stretchy fabric, but you have to be careful. So when you're sewing, you can't really hold it, and you know, you can't put any pressure on it when you're sewing it. You really just kind of have to go slow and let the machine pull your fabric through. Okay? Trust your machine. Trust your machine. Let it do its thing. All you're going to do is guide the fabric through there. Okay? So let's look at the pieces for this block. Okay? So one of the big pieces that you're going to cut is, again, it's a big triangle. Okay? You're going to cut the triangle, and again, see, this stretches. See all the stretch in that? You have to be careful when you're sewing. Okay? Now, this is where it gets a little tricky, because we're going to cut some squares. The directions tell you to cut a square. You're going to cut it in half, and then you're going to attach it to this block. Okay? So you have to be careful when you're laying your block out, because we want it to open up and become the other half of that triangle. Whoops, sorry. Right? So audition your placement. Okay? Especially those of y'all that have not sewn with a bias block or made a triangle block.
What is bias?
That's the diagonal across the fabric. When you cut horizontally across the fabric. Okay? Because look on the back of that. Look on the back of that piece of fabric. Put your eyeballs on. You can see on the back of that piece of fabric. You can see that cotton is woven at right angles, and when you cut diagonally across those angles, cut this way across them, it allows the fabric to stretch. Okay. So what I do is, like I said, I audition my fabric. Take a pen. Pens are your friend. Don't be afraid of pens. Put it at about the 1/4 inch mark. Y'all start getting to the point where you can eyeball and see pretty much 1/4 inch. And audition your placement before you sew. Otherwise, you and Jeff are going to get friendly. Okay? Audition. Pin it. and roll it over to make sure that it's in the place that it needs to be. Now, you're going to find that you have what are called dog ears at the bottom. Don't trim those off until you get your thing in the right place. Okay? But then you're going to once you get this sewn together correctly, you're going to you will actually move it over on the back side. I got pins everywhere. Then you're going to get it sewn. You'll sew it together. This is the back side. You'll get it sewn together, and for whatever reason, I flip one up. I don't know why. Don't make me lie. But you can trim them both off, and then press. Be careful when you're pressing. So let me give you a tip maybe that will help you when you press. When you're pressing a triangle, again, we don't want to pull on this. Okay, you don't want to pull on your fabric even when you're pressing or ironing. I prefer not to say ironing because I want you pressing, not rubbing your fabric. Okay, you're not rubbing wrinkles out per se, as much as we are pressing a seam in or a new wrinkle in is what we're doing. So when you get ready to open your triangles, once you've got them sewn together, okay, put the light side down and open it. Just kind of roll it open gently. Finger press. Mash it with your finger. Press along the seam and then press it. Okay? Be sure that you're opening your seam completely. Open it up completely. We don't want any pleats. Okay? That's another way that you lose fabric. Okay? Another reason why maybe your blocks come out too small. Okay? So make sure that when you're opening your seams to press, because look, y'all, see how much I can pull on this? You have to be careful that you don't. Yeah. You have to be careful that you don't distort the square, because we're making a square block, right? Is what we want to end up with is a square plant. Okay, so where's I had that? Oh, I had that over here. Okay, so it's supposed to cross, and it will cross. Okay, when we're making this little piece of triangle right here. Okay, this one is a pay close attention, girls. So you know when you're at home and you're making this block, or today while you're making this block, audition, try that fabric out in that spot. And if it doesn't look right when you open it up, because when you open this, if you sew a 1/4 inch seam, when you open that, it should line up across the top of there, right? Ideally, that's what we want to have happen. Yeah, ideally, that's what we want to have happen. Okay, so audition your fabric. Let's talk about the economy block in the middle. Okay, so this again, this little economy block that's in the middle, you're going to take a 6.5 inch block, right? And you're going to put the corners on it, just like we did before. Now remember, I told y'all I'm a little frugal, so what I like to do is I like to run that extra seam, and then I cut mine off and keep them. That's how I ended up with these. Okay? I just had to cut this one off because I wanted to show y'all with it still attached. So again, when you draw that line, because I think the directions tell you to draw the horizontal line or the diagonal line corner to corner. Again, you want to stitch to the outside. I'm gonna pass this around so everybody can see. I draw a line on mine. Because look, I get to sewing. I have my music jamming. I'm in my zone, right? In my little sewing room headspace. I get up there. I make mistakes too. Okay? So to minimize my mistakes, you know, I use that little iron-on, what do they call them, friction pins, and put me a little mark on there. And then when I get ready to cut it off and press it open, it'll disappear and it won't be on my fabric. So I'm happy about that. And I've got an extra half square triangle I can use later on. Okay, so that's just me being frugal. You don't have to do that. I'm not saying telling you have to, but I do. So that's what I'm showing. So if you want to be able to do that, absolutely. The I think these pieces, the long rectangles, that's fairly that's a straight seam, no problems there. Make sure one thing that you might want to do is to make sure and pay attention to where your solid piece of your triangle ends up. Okay, because remember we want the triangle. What makes the churn dash is the little triangle at the corner here. Those little corner pieces. You don't have to have all of this, but you have to have this. Okay, that's what makes the churn dash. Okay. When you go to put these pieces together, what I did was I sewed all my little triangle pieces, all of these. I sewed those blocks first, and then I did my rectangles. And I use a board like this to lay my stuff out. I just find it easier to keep up with what goes where, and so that I sew it in the right orientation. Okay, so I put the top and bottom piece will end up together. Okay, and then who's got the middle piece? Oh, yeah, the center piece, the center with the economy block in the center. And then you put the two other side pieces on over here. Okay. So the next thing to do would be to sew again. Make sure you're putting your stuff in the right orientation. What I started doing that really helps me because when I'm looking at it, sometimes I don't catch everything. I take a photo or look through a camera, and then when you're looking, I don't know why, but you can see it like, oh, that's not even turned the right way. That has saved me a lot of looking things out. So before I start sewing, I make sure. And then I start getting kind of, I don't know, there's something about the photo. You can just see it. Stuff with glare at you from the photograph. So I'll tell y'all a little tale here in a minute. So this is the center section, okay? Sew that together next, and then the other bottom piece, finish that one together. Obviously, this is going to have another one on the other side. Make sure that your triangles are pointing in the right direction, and then you just zip the three pieces together. So the top together this way, and then the bottom together on the bottom. Press as you go. Okay? Any questions?
Hey, Liz.
Hey.
Hey, I have a question.
Okay.
About you said you like to press the seams open?
I do. Some of these though you may not want to. I think the directions tell you, and I did not press all of my seams open. So
Okay.
on this little block, the little corner blocks, I pressed the little this part of the triangle. I pressed this open only because I've got so much fabric that comes together right here in this middle piece.
Okay.
Okay, so I press open here, but
Okay.
when I put the solid green piece on, because I have so much fabric at that intersection, I folded it over. It just wants to lay that way. Okay. Same thing with this piece. The directions clearly tell you which way to press these middle lines, and you do that so that they nest. Okay, so let's talk about nesting. And you can see that I opened that out. I opened it out once I pressed it. Okay, so I opened it out once I got the two seams sewn.
So you press it, so you get them nested. Yeah.
Yep, so I nest.
And then you open them up.
The individual sections nest together. So when you sew this, do I have it right? No, I don't. All right, so when I sewed the top piece to the middle and the bottom piece to the middle, I did nest my seams. Now, again, you have to be really careful when you're nesting seams. Once you get it nested up, I still like to stick a pin in it, okay? Because I want it to stay there. And sometimes if you're not familiar with nesting seams and you've not nested a lot of seams, I found that as a newer quilter that I had trouble when I opened it back up, it might not match exactly. So to get it to, and it really and truly is how it's going into your machine underneath your pressure foot. You know, because there's no way to hold it with your fingers, because you can feel it with your fingers nested. But once I get it nested, then I stick a pin in it, and it stays nested. It doesn't slip out a little bit, right? So again, remember when you're feeding pinned fabric through your machine, you want to make sure that you go slow when you get to these important intersections, so that you can pull your pin out kind of at the last minute. You might have to go pick, pick, pick until you get used to doing it. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna pass this around so you can look at the back where I've nested it. Any questions about nesting? Okay. All right. I think this just like all the other blocks, our big blocks are all going to come out at 14 and a half unfinished. Okay. All right. So the next block is the economy block. Okay. You have to make 5 of these this month. Okay. Make 5. Ladies, I want to remind you, we're sewing not with a full quarter-inch seam allowance. We're sewing with a scant quarter. Scant, which means a couple of thread widths off of a true quarter-inch. Okay, a little bit smaller than a true quarter-inch, just a hair. Well, if you think about it, every time if you're putting, we'll take out just a plain 9 patch. Okay, you're taking out a couple of thread widths each time you sew a seam. So in order to get it to come out to the exact dimension that you want it, there's some school of thought, a school of thought that says you'll come out your pieces, your finished blocks will come out, or your unfinished blocks will come out closer to the true measurement. So you could lose 1/8 of an inch with the folding, which, you know, a lot of people may not press their fabric. I love using, I've got a stick that has a little bit of cotton, a little bit of batting on it. It's an ironing stick that I use when I'm opening my seams. I use that stick. The wool mat helps as well, but again, I want my seams as open, you know, flat as I can get them. Ironing your seams flat is a huge thing. Making sure you're getting it good and flat, and making sure that you don't have any pleats, that you've not ironed any of them, because you do actually lose a thread or two here and there. And if you've got if you've got a big block, it's got a lot of little pieces, you could lose, you know, 1/4 of an inch or more. So. Oh, so, yeah. So, Terry and I went to QuiltCon yesterday to look at the quilts, and yeah, so probably one of the most astonishing quilts that I saw, and it did win an award of some sort. I don't remember what the award was, but this was the coolest quilt, because I walked up on it and I was fascinated with the fact that every little, they look like little snail trail blocks, and every little block, I mean, they're tiny. These little strips are like 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so I'm looking at this and I can see the gray and the white, and then a dark, like a navy blue. And I looked and looked, and when I stepped back to take a picture, I could see a man's face. I could see that right there. I see it. I couldn't see it. Oh wow! You can't see it. So look at this. Can you see that? That was a quilt at QuiltCon yesterday. I mean, and there were people gathered up around this quilt, and it just was amazing. amazing. Can y'all see that? You see the little block, that's what I was looking at with the snail trail block, and then it quilted on top of that. Stitch in the ditch, I think it was how it quilted. Isn't that crazy? Did you go? Yeah. Look at that. Isn't it? So again, you guys, it's all about, you really need to pay attention so that your pieces come together like you want them to. You have to be careful with pleats, and you have to be careful pressing, making sure your stuff is open. Again, don't pull it to open it. I mean, you have to pull it a little. You have to just roll it easy, and then finger press and hold it in place. Careful with your pressing. So pressing is important. There were a lot of amazing quilts up there. Okay, so let's talk about this economy block and how I put this together. So I really didn't read the instructions because I'm one of those people. I've made this block before. So what I do is I start with the very center. Now obviously I have fussy cut a pretty little piece on here. Got a pretty little flower. What I do is I pinch or press the corners. So if you look, you can see my pinches. See here? My corners. That's the center of my block. I folded my block and mashed it. So that gives me an idea of where my placement's going to be. You see how I did that? See here? Oh, okay. And make sure everybody gets opportunity to see this. I actually put my iron a little bit so it would be more visible to y'all. And you can do that too. Fabric. So I got it in half. That's why I'm from Kentucky. In case y'all can't tell from the accent, I'm not a native North Carolinian. I am from the hills of Kentucky. All right. So once
Lynn?
Yes.
Hey, I'm sorry to stop you. Did you say you pinched the fabric?
I pinch it. So I fold it in half. Lucy, I'm gonna need you to call back later, honey.
I couldn't understand what you said.
Okay. So what I do is I fold the fabric in half, and I pinch it with my fingers. Okay. And
you pinch it.
I pinch it. And I pinch it. I fold it both ways and pinch it so that I've got my halfway marked all the way around. Okay. So
I see. Okay.
the next direction tells you to take your first color and and I do this. I fold and pinch my triangles the same way. Can you see that? See it pinched and folded? So now this pinch mark will fit in this very center pinch mark of my center block. I would pin that in place. Make sure I've got it, and then sew it right now. This is where you might want to use what they call a leader. You know what a leader is? You know what a leader is? You weren't listening in class. Because I've talked about leaders and enders before. Leaders is the little piece of cloth that you run through. Okay. Remember?
I saw that in my class.
Okay, well, it's called a leader. So when you're in class and so now you know. Okay? I actually put the tip of my fabric as far up underneath that presser foot as I can get it, and I let the presser feet, the dog feet, pull the fabric in. Okay? When I go to, I don't necessarily try to put my needle down at the very first stitch. I mean, I get it as close as I can, but I like to bump with a angled piece. I personally like to bump my corner up against it and let it start that way, because I've got a leader cloth. I'm gonna run that leader cloth through first, so I've got something to pull. That way it doesn't accidentally pull my corner down into my machine. Make me have to take it and see Dr. Marty.
Yeah, so you don't sew the tip of that.
No, because you're sewing in a quarter of an inch this way, okay? So it should bump up. If you run your edge along your quarter-inch foot or along your quarter-inch line, it should not, but stranger things happen. So again, that leader cloth does help. Keep your strap. Okay, so once you get it ironed on, you'll have that whole inner ring. Okay? And then you do the same thing once you get it here. You got to go to the very center. You got to find the middle of the green. Okay? See my green pieces? Once I get this corner on, I'll have 4 little blocks, and then I'll have to figure out how to get to the middle of this. Okay? So in your big block, the big block was not so bad because it was one big block and it only has 4 corners. You're only doing it one time. This one you're going to go around twice. Okay? There are you can do an economy block that has as many rings around it, different colors as you want it. Okay, so you can make that, but this one has 2 rings, this one only has 1. This one, the block in the middle here, is more along the lines of the flip and stitch. Okay, but these you're going to sew the little triangles on, and this is where it gets a little tricky. Okay. Again, you just have to pay close attention to what you're doing. You know, this is how you really get in the zone when you're sewing. You have to close the door. Don't call me. But talk to you later, Lucy. Okay. So you're gonna find the middle. Okay. Always find the middle. That's just, for me, that's the easiest way. Find the middle of that edge that I have to put up against it, and it's always going to be your long edge. Okay. So these triangles have a long edge and 2 shorter edges. It's always going to be your long edge. Did I confuse you?
Oh, no, I was just going to make sure I had the right one. Yeah, I think that I've done this cooking.
Oh, you did?
Them a lot easier to do than
Right.
with all that class stuff. We don't have enough time.
No, not the way she designed the quilt. There's just one.
It's not that difficult to do, like she said, with marking that, it's just really refresh, you take these people, it's not that difficult.
Yeah.
Coming down to that time. You're ready to do it.
I do. I have another. I have a UFO at home. It's a beautiful blanket that I started probably at about your level and had to figure this out on my own. Watched a lot of videos. But this seems to be the easiest way to do it. Is just to mark your centers and then pin and sew them. Again, just be careful. Don't pull on your fabric as it's going through the machine. Okay? And y'all, you will be fine. You will be fine. I promise you will. If you want, when I did these, I did not necessarily fussy cut my centers, but you could fussy cut a center and put a little flower or something off of the floral material in here. If you find one that you like better, you know, just be careful with your fussy cutting, because remember we're getting a little close to the edge with the fabric. So, but if you were building this block at another time on another quilt on your own, so you really like this Churndash Variation, and you want to make a bigger block for whatever reason, make your own quilt, design your own quilt. You can fussy cut this in, so you have a cute fabric. You can make one of these blocks, and you can cut out the little character on the fabric for the grandbabies. You can put that in. You put that little character for a picture frame, like a picture frame. Okay? Other than that, I mean, other than matching your corners, there is one more thing I want to tell you about. All right, so, I wish I had a bigger board. I wish I could draw it so I could show you. Because what we want to have happen is we want that point, that white point of that corner, to just barely touch the inside of that pink. All right? We don't want a flat corner, because if we sew too big, what happens is it chops off our point. And we don't have a point, we have a little square piece here. All right, so this is where I'm going to teach you to fudge it. We've talked about fudging before. You've heard me use that term. Sometimes, if you've not sewn a really straight seam, when you put that first round of triangles on here, your seam allowance right here might be a little shy. Might be a little shy. If you do a, if you're not paying attention as it goes across where these two meet, okay, you may end up with like a little arc there. So you need to follow the curve, is what I'm going to tell you. So I'm going to pass this around, and I've marked. So where this comes across, so this little triangle makes a seam this way, right? This little triangle makes a seam going this way. See that? So it makes a TP. Okay? You know the TP poles? Where the poles come out the top? That's where you want to sew your seam. Okay, when you put this second round on here, you want that seam, you want to guide that needle. So what I'm going to tell you is put your triangle down onto your sewing machine so that the back, you can see where you got to go. You got to see that TP. Now I've marked it with a purple dot right there so it makes it easier to see. Makes the TP, and you want to sew straight across where it intersects. Maybe just one or two. Again, we're talking, remember when we talked about flip and stitch, you want to be a little north or a little bit to the outside. Remember I said draw a little arrow? If you have to, draw an arrow on this. Be a tiny one, but you'll know, right? So make sure when if you're creating any square that has a point, when you cross that seam and you fold that fabric out, what you want is that point to be just at the edge. And they call that, when you run over it and it doesn't open all the way and you don't have your pretty crisp point, they call that cutting off your points. Okay? So you have to be careful when you're sewing your seam across there. You fold that fabric out, and not careful, because you're sewing with bias. You're sewing a bias. It's not impossible, and I don't want to scare you to death with bias, but you just have to be aware. You have to pay attention. Okay? Did you want to see this? Okay. I think that's all there is to this, guys. Yeah. Yeah. Piece of cake.
Whatever.
Right.
Oh, yeah, yikes.
It's not terrible. So you got two new concepts. We're working with bias. We're doing three new blocks actually. It's three, the variation. Huh?
What about that, just when
Hmm.
you show it, when you say, he's concerned where some of her points don't come out just right. And when I got looking at it, it's because her seam is too small. She's making a scant quarter inch, but she's making it too thick. Okay? If you look at this right here, you can see where she's sewn, and I've pinned it out here. So if you open it now, the point's right. But make sure when you're doing that scant quarter inch, you just want you to do a couple of grabs over, like you said. If you make it too much smaller, it's going to throw your points off.
So on the other side, you cut the line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in this case, it's just a regular seam.
Yeah.
So there is no pencil
Can we
line.
show, can I show this?
Yeah.
So see this is how obvious. See how small? See how small? And the won't be in? And you can do it like come together like this. Okay? And so, a piece below that. See how far you are right now.
I've got one of those in my shower.
I don't use it because I've got a guide on my rule already.
Yeah, I love it. Exactly, that's a great idea.
What would you do for bad that was sort of like you looked at like in the shower across and you're telling me, you know, and it's like, I'm sorry, I said it was for quilting. And so I put it on for a while, but it really holds things. I just have to put it right again. It is getting better. I'm so proud of y'all. Y'all are doing great. Great.
Did everybody see Terry's little show and tell up here that she brought? Pam, do you have any questions?
Hey, no, I'm just not right now. I'm just starting on my block, my economy block.
Okay. All right.
So I'm just working on that in the background, but if I have a question, I'll jump in.
All right. Well, just
But
holler.
thanks, it's been really helpful so far.
Good. I hope so. You know, because we all have tips. We all learn things differently, and because we have some different skill levels in this room, even though
Yeah.
we're covering like basic stuff, it's building. It's building on your technique, and sometimes it's perfecting
You
your
always
technique.
pick up tips
Oh,
from
absolutely.
people, you know.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's really great. So I'm gonna get started on my economy blocks, but I'm just back here if you don't see me.
Okay, fabulous.
All right, thanks.
All right.